beautiful to a wonderful piece of Africa, Djuma Game Reserve. My name is Mark. I hope you're going to join us this afternoon. We're doing one of my favorite things, and we're doing it in one of my favorite vehicles, so I hope we're going to have some fun. This is Djuma Game Reserve. It's in the Sabi Sand Game Reserve, part of the Kruger National Park, which is a vast wildlife area here in South Africa, a world-renowned national park. On a fantastic summer's day, we've got some dark cloud in the sort of the northwest. We've got a front that's moved over, but patches of blue and just beautiful sunshine, beautiful green reflections. Funny how many times I do this, and sometimes I kind of get the butterflies before I come on live with you, because I get excited about conditions, and I hope I can bring it to you in the right way. But yes, this is the most wonderful thing for me to do right now in my point in my life, is driving a vehicle around the bush and having a camera to be able to bring it to you anywhere else in the world, and for you to be able to interact with me, send me questions, interact, give me subjects to talk about. And so it's something new, it's something different. It's not just broadcasting from a bedroom or an office or a studio. This is broadcasting from a Land Rover in the middle of nowhere, and we're going to see what we can find for you this afternoon. We've had a cold front that moved through, brought a lot of rain last night, in some places up to 2 inches of rain. Out here on the fringes of that very big storm, I'm sure we probably got about half of that. 50 millimeters was the most, I think, in some places, and well, we might have had maybe 20-25 millimeters, about an inch of rain. I'm not too sure. But what it has done is it's greened up the green, and it's softened the sand. It's made summer more of a reality, because it's not just the beginning of the growth of things, it's now things that are starting to mature. The grasses are starting to get their flower heads, the trees are starting to become in, well, full leaf, but they're starting to produce the fruits that their flowers were out to produce earlier. There's a lot to see and a lot to do. Hope you're going to join me, and I hope you're going to send in some questions. We had a lovely question session this morning. You can send in questions through Twitter, that's #SafariLive, or you could use our email, that's questions@WildEarthTV. And well, there's a reason I'm stopped here, apart from the fact that it's just a really beautiful view. That we're on the western edge of an open area called Quarantine. I can explain to you why it's called Quarantine shortly. But it's a vast open area. It is artificially kept open because ordinarily a lot of trees would begin to grow, but it's necessary to keep open areas because there are a lot of grazers and there are a lot of animals that require this type of habitat. And I guess the elephants aren't doing their job properly enough by maintaining these open areas. So every now and then some of the new shrubs and some of the new things that start growing are kept in check by various management methods to maintain a grassland for the grassland species. You see, unfortunately, this was once a self-contained reserve, and so animals that are here need the right habitat, even though it's become part of the greater Kruger. It's maintaining habitat, maintaining a diversity of habitat, or rather continuing a legacy of maintaining a diverse habitat when it was a fenced-in reserve. And we'll probably see, if we come back here later, a lot of the grassland animals coming back out onto the open area for their nighttime feed and their nighttime safety. And at the moment, because of the cloud breaking up, the sun coming out, it got very, very hot, very, very humid, and a lot of the animals moved off into the bush. It's a lot different to what we saw this morning. This morning was the antithesis of that. It was a cold front that moved in, a lot of rain overnight from a very hot day yesterday, so that forced a lot of animals into hiding, trying to adjust to that difference in temperature. So now I'm sure they're all getting back to normal, and I hope we're going to see some wonderful things. There was an impala ewe out here just before we went live, and as it often happens is that we find an animal and we want to open up our broadcast for an afternoon or a morning with something, but the animal doesn't quite understand the countdown from 5 minutes to 2 minutes to 1 minute and then the 30-second countdown, because it's almost always that at that 30-second or 10-second countdown the animal moves out of frame and out of shot completely. So I don't know where she's gone, but what was interesting about this female impala, this ewe, was that she is on her own and she's with her baby, a very, very new baby. And I'll let you think about that so that we can go and find her, because I'd like to be able to see her so I can explain a few things that might raise some questions. one in particular being, why is she on her own when she's a social species? So sounds like something's happening on the Game Drive channel. We're driving in a part of the game reserve, or the national park. It's a private game reserve within a national park, and there are very many different landowners that comprise this private game reserve called the Sabi Sands. Djuma Game Reserve is one of those private reserves that constitutes the Sabi Sands, that is merely a part of the greater Kruger National Park area. And some of the other landowners have lodges, just as Yuri does here, and those lodges have safari vehicles out in the afternoons. Much the same time that we go out, they have safari vehicles out with guests of these lodges, game lodges and safari camps. And the radio network lets us know where different animals are, and by the same token I need to let them know when we find something so that everybody can have a look at a particular species. Never crowded. There are rules as to the number of vehicles that are allowed to visit with an animal. We don't like stressing them out. We don't like to interfere in their behavior. We don't like to crowd them, as you might find in some parts of Africa where vehicles can encircle an animal because there's just no rules. So I don't know where she's gone, but she must have gone into cover. And I'm not surprised. This was a female impala, an impala ewe who had just given birth. We saw her this morning also, just prior to opening up our broadcast. There she goes. She's obviously very nervous. She's away from the herd. She's got a very, very newborn. I think this morning, when we saw it this morning, she was still licking it, so it could have been within 10 to 15 minutes of her giving birth. There, we got just a glimpse through the bush. And there's the baby. There's a beautiful frame picture almost. If I could just an inch back there, get baby's ears. Tiny little thing. She was still licking it clean this morning. She must have just given birth, and it's vital that she... Sorry. Interrupted by the radio. I'll just turn it down for now. Okay, so we need to find our way down somewhere to the south. I think there's something at Twin Dams, not picking up much. But if she were to give birth and rejoin the herd immediately without bonding with her child, without her child learning her scent, her call, her every nuance of her, and her learning every nuance of her new child, if they were to be scattered during a predator hunt, there's a very, very good chance they would never be reunited, because the youngster would not know what to follow and is likely to follow the nearest moving thing. There have even been stories of young antelope following lion, and lion, I guess in some ways, in a few cases, somewhat of a maternal instinct coming out. There's the little one's actually drinking. I'm going to try and roll back another inch or two, or just move slightly. Maybe we'll get a gap. You can almost see little one drinking. No. Where did the little one go? There it is, drinking. It's tiny. It's going to be the smallest impala when she joins the herd. In fact, there's a very good chance over the next couple of days, because there must be a herd that comes out here onto this open area at night. I'm sure we'll see it, because the other youngsters, most of the youngsters are getting on for 2 months now, nearly 2 months. 6 to, well, I suppose 5 to 6 weeks old. I think I'm going to leave her. I don't want to disturb her too much. There's not much better of a view we're going to get of her, but it's just a really wonderful thing to see. Newborn lamb coming into the world. Oh wait, there's a little gap through this tree. Stop drinking now, because you probably can hear us. Let me know when you can see that. And then I can just manipulate this. The little one's already tired. Looks like it wants to lie down. No, it's just a little too forward. Obscuring mom's face with a branch from a silver cluster leaf. There we go. And to see that little tail of the little one, it's starting to sniff around on the ground. Even though it's a few hours old, it does look a little unsteady on its feet still. It's trying to lie down. I guess it's still learning how to lie down. And now that it has laid down, I think we need to leave her in peace. We will be seeing her when she rejoins the herd. It's going to be very easy to pick her out because she's going to have the youngest baby in the herd. There are the odd late lambs born, some of them even as late as February, which is very unusual because that means that the rutting season went on very, very long into July, maybe June, July. But I suppose it can be all attributed to the change in a lot of conditions. I guess climate change could be bantered about in that rainfall has been different, trees have been blooming at different times, earlier than normal, temperatures have been different. There have been subtle changes to the environment, or to the sequence of things within the environment. Not so much that the environment has changed, apart from of course the very serious flooding that occurred almost 3 years ago now, back in the beginning of 2012. Is it 3 years? Yes, can you believe it? January of 2012, severe flooding caused a huge change in things, in places. 20 to 30 years worth of erosion occurring in one nightfall of rain, and that was a case of 2 years worth of rainfall falling in 18 hours. So the resultant erosion was exacerbated by the amount of water that was flowing. There's a kudu cow. It's nice to see that some things are starting to move around already. It's not excessively hot. It's actually quite pleasant. Hello, Mrs. Kudu, one of our largest antelope. Beautiful big ears. Actually, I think that means we'll just continue on this road. It's a good idea. Often I never really know which way to turn when I get to a junction. But if there's an animal or a bird, it's a good idea to take their advice. So, because she's facing that way, I'm going to continue this way. She must be out, there we go. There's more kudu cows further up, just in front of her. So she's not alone, just others are hidden. I'd say considerably bigger than something like the white-tailed deer. They stand easily maybe 5 feet at the top of the nuchal muscle. I would probably be eye level if I was standing next to her. Her eyes would probably meet, and I'm 5'10", I think, something like that. Bye bye, madam. East. Something's near Twin Dams. Talking about him. We'll go and see what he is. Could be a buffalo. Wrong volume. Did you get that? What about a kudu?
Mike on Twitter, why was the female kudu on herself? By herself?
Mike on Twitter, why was the female kudu on her own? Mike, thanks for the question. She wasn't on her own. There were more, we didn't see them. We must never assume that something is on its own. First of all, there's nothing unusual for something to be on its own, but often we might see something, we just don't see the rest of the group because the bush is quite thick. There were other cows, there were other kudu around. I saw them as we moved off. It would have been a little bit awkward just looking at an ear or a piece of rump through the camera. And so we moved on. But there's actually no reason why an animal can't be on its own. Much the same as with us humans. We are a social species. There's nothing wrong with us being on our own. I've been on my own most of my life. Although I suppose there's something unusual about that. Although but we have to take into account as well that we are watching an animal sometimes for a couple of seconds in its entire lifetime. We have no idea if it's on its own. It might just be that particular moment in time that we see it, that we don't see other individuals, or that it is apart from other individuals, or some other circumstances like giving birth or having a baby or something like that requires it to be on its own. So there's no real reason, there's no answer to that question why any particular animal should be on its own, because only the animal really knows if it is on its own. We don't know what other animals might be deeper in the bush. They move around in a fairly large group sometimes, or rather, irrespective of the group size, they're often spread out because they have to. Kudu are browsers and grazers. They do a lot of browsing. They are that type of antelope. They're high enough that they have what we call a trophic level. Trophic levels are the different heights that different animals browse at. Browsing, or when we talk about browsing, we're talking about the animals that eat the leaves, as opposed to the grazers. Grazers are the animals that eat the grasses. There aren't really any trophic levels as far as the grazers are concerned, because it doesn't matter how big you are as an animal, you can eat the grass. So nature divides that task up by either eating the top, the middle, or the bottom part of the grass, or just the whole thing, as in the bulk grazers. But in terms of the browsers, it's a different matter entirely. All the different browsers, from your tallest, which are your giraffe, and to a large extent the elephant, because the elephant has that reach with its trunk that can pretty much reach the, maybe even a little bit higher than your average giraffe. All the different browsers are of different heights. That's why we have different sized antelopes, different sized browsers, so that although they're eating off of the same trees and the same vegetation, their competition is limited because they're at different heights. And it might well be that a kudu can stoop down low and eat the same kind of browse that a steenbok, which is a tenth of the size. But it doesn't really matter, because essentially there isn't that much competition at the height of the kudu as much as there is, as in the same way that there isn't that much competition for browse at the height that giraffe are browsing. And because of that fact, when you do have browsers, it's very, very seldom that you find two animals of the same species browsing on the same tree. Because while I'm browsing on this tree, I want my herd mate or my sister or whatever it might be to be feeding on another tree, because it increases our chances of eating more nutritional vegetation. Excuse me. Yeah, I'll get back to that in a minute. You see, there's one thing that happens with trees when animals start eating on the trees, and of course you got to remember that when animals are eating on leaves, they're eating the leaves that are the most nutritious, but also they're eating the leaves that are the most palatable leaves, the tastiest ones, the ones that have the least amount of tannins and toxins. So while they're eating on leaves, the plant itself is actually producing tannins to try and defend itself. And so it doesn't really help animals to be eating on the same tree, because the plant then goes into a greater or a heightened level of defense, and within a very short time those leaves become very, very bitter, and if not toxic, because of the heavy browse that's happening. It's just the way trees defend themselves against animals from overutilizing them, overeating on one tree. So it's necessary for a lot of the herbivores, whether it's elephant or kudu or duiker, or doesn't matter what it is, they all need to be actually feeding on different trees. And when the bush is quite thick, the more spread out they are, the more ground they can cover to look out for danger, to look out for predators, to give a warning call. So they're not necessarily always right on top of each other to be together. They, in some cases, even with giraffe could be 100 meters apart. Or that's what, 100 and something yards. Or like elephant could be a mile apart and they'd still be together, according to the elephant. Of course, our interpretation of it is that they're alone. So they aren't necessarily alone. And I suppose the other thing is that sometimes we're only seeing something for that brief moment in its lifetime. We might never see that same animal again. And how do we know what its social structure has been for the previous 6 to 8 years and for the following 6 to 8 years? Oh, I see buffalo. The whole herd of buffalo. Wow. African buffalo. It's quite a notorious animal. They're big, they're heavy, they've got heavy horns, and they have a reputation. However, in the big family group like this, which we call a breeding herd, and there are probably a couple of hundred here. Hello children. Hello mama, look at this big female here. It's huge. You see, she doesn't have the very heavy boss, that very heavy horny lump on the top of her head between her horns that the males have. And she's quite heavy lactating, so she's got a calf somewhere in the herd. While I'm stopped, I just wanted to see if I can successfully talk on the radio. I need to find out what's happening down at Twin Dams while we're looking at buffalo. Afternoon stations, Mark Mobile Wild Earth, Columbia and Yari on Rebecca's Road. Can I get an update on that sighting at Twin Dams? Copied that, thanks. Okay, copied. Can you give me an idea of where he was moving and where he was heading? Copy, thanks. See, now when a buffalo looks down its nose at you like that, then it sometimes can be a little bit nerve-wracking. Yeah, shaking her head. She wouldn't really do anything. They are extremely protective over their young and their old. The story about sometimes the sick and the old getting killed first or becoming targets is actually not really that true for buffalo, because invariably if there are predators around, the buffalo are likely to hide the youngsters and the old and maybe the sick in the middle of the herd and actually protect them from predators. There are often stories of buffalo charging lion when lion are trying to take down one of their youngsters or one of their older members. This is a very big herd. Might be the same herd we saw earlier, or rather about a week ago or so, not too far from here. Some rather young individuals further deeper in, some of them got a message from Lynn to say how great this is to share it with children and grandchildren. I think that's one of the reasons why I love this so much, is being able to share it with people who otherwise might never be able to come to Africa. Or even for those who have been to Africa, for them to reminisce or to relive it. Or for those that want to come to get a taste of what it's like. I mean, you for whatever reason it is that you're joining us, it is an incredible opportunity to bring a really wonderful world to your home in real time. It's just so different from an edited program that has 30 minutes of fast action, tooth and claw, blood and gore. But I'd like to show you a little bit of nature that is actually very, very passive and very, very calm. And to me, the only world that I want to live in. Oh, I've got a question from the Tar Heel State, North Carolina. This is a really old girl that we're looking at now. You can see her hip bones, her ribs. She's an old lady. Maybe not necessarily showing in her horns. There are some cows here that have got much bigger horns, but of course that is all genetic. It could be just illness, but she's not a very healthy buffalo, this old girl. She looks old. I'm looking at flabs of skin and wrinkles. Elle from North Carolina was asking about the size of our African buffalo versus the American bison. I'm not too sure. I mean, it's hard to compare, having never seen a bison. I would imagine that they're a little bit taller at the shoulder. They're also a lot furrier, and that gives an impression of greater size. Why don't we compare weight? I suppose big African buffalo, maybe weighing up to 750, 800 kilograms. What is your heaviest bison? I think the bison would have a much heavier head. I think they've got a much stronger neck, much heavier head. And maybe body size pretty much the same, but of course with all that shaggy coat you can't really tell the body from the coat. Trying to get a whiff of us, also trying to be intimidating. When a buffalo bull looks at you down his nose like that, this is obviously also, it's this old cow, so she's wise, and you can see by her ears too. Her ears are very tatty. She's been dragged through the bush backwards by the looks of things. She's seen a few things, that's for sure. I wonder if these are rain frogs or sand frogs. We're hearing almost like a cackling sound. No, 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 no. It's one of the waterless frogs, one of the frogs that are not water dependent. Got some really inquisitive individuals. Yeah, so adult bull bison, this is from Mike on Twitter sending a message. Adult bull bison around 2,000 pounds. Well, that's a lot heavier than our big adult bull buffalo. We're just going to move along because there's a vehicle coming past us, one of our neighbors. A really good friend of mine driving in the driver's seat. Hey Elvis, how are you, bud? Good. Good. Hi again. Hi. Yeah. Has anybody tried up Leadwood Road? No. Do you know where he was at Trinban?
There was, if you come there by the big Djuma,
yeah.
Wednesday, we're going to be out on Leadwood Road.
Okay, yeah, I know that. But there's also off Leadwood Road, you know that old Mpisi Kaya?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, there's some big pans at the back there. Remember Mishu and Induna, they used to lalapanzi there a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, have a lovely afternoon. Bye bye. Hello buffalo. This is a youngster. She looks like she's pregnant actually, very heavy. Like a big cow. Hello, you are a cow, you're a buffalo cow. Hello Mrs. Buffalo. That might be her first calf that she might be having, because just starting to get a little bit of her memories are just starting to swell a little bit. Very big round buffalo, that one. Someone's curious. Someone's nickname is Curious. Looking at the white patches around the eyes, we could maybe look at some of those. Some of these buff are getting irritable with each other. They're bald patches. They areas where I guess you could say calluses. You'll often find buffalo rubbing on twigs and sticks and trees, rubbing the corner of their eyes, probably because of irritating flies. And as they age, they develop calluses where they tend to do a lot of rubbing and scratching. As far as I know, it might be some other reason, but it's mostly only in the older buffalo. You have a look at this little boy. There's a little bull just up here over my shoulder. That one. Let's see how clean his face is. Yeah, he is going to be a big one. Alex saying looks like he's going to grow up quite a big boy. He's already been looking quite impressive. He's a youngster. He's only about 2, maybe 3. Hard to tell. Actually, he must be more than 3 with horns that big. Okay. There's still more coming along. We're going to amble on down the road. There's still a lot more around. Ellen on Twitter, the easy way, I suppose that's a very appropriate question, since we do have a big breeding herd. Easy way to identify bulls from cows. Well, yeah, we're coming towards the back of the herd, so these are mostly bulls at the back here. Let's have a look at a couple of these bulls, and then right behind this bull that we have in front, there are a couple of cows at the back, so we can actually have a look. The bull buffalo, first of all, where above his eyes, above his forehead, is a very, very heavy, dense horn mass known as the boss, and only bulls have that. The cows barely have that. They have like this pasted wig kind of thing. It takes many years for these bulls to develop their boss. So I guess there could be a slight similarity between young bulls and cows, but then of course there are the genitals that are unmistakable in buffalo, and those are not memories that he's carrying between his legs. She has 4 nipples, she has 4 memories, and if we look at the back, well, we've got a calf. Let's see, a little bit too, who are you on? You're on that little one. Okay. The little sort of bump underneath the belly is the same place where the umbilical cord is, but it is also the same placing of the male's penis. And normally with the bull there is tufts of hair, whereas the female just has like a little bump where her belly button was, where her umbilical cord was as a calf. Maybe we need to, there's a cow, that one right at the back, up a little bit, that one there, yes, facing us. Let's see, there's not much of a boss, there's not much of a, well, there's a bull now on the right. Maybe we need to go and find some better examples that are closer so you can see. I don't want to be getting too technical. Well, I suppose how much more technical can I get after being that there's it. It's nice, look at that cow. See the horn mass above her head, very, very small compared to the bulls. Also, when they're big, or rather when they're adult and they've had calves already, their memories are quite visible between their legs, and of course naturally they don't have that very, very large and heavy scrotum. Quite a big herd. Well, my guess is I'm seeing some impala here too. We can stop and look at some impala. Impala are one of the most common antelope that we have here in most of Africa. In fact, impala is this size of antelope that is eaten by practically every predator on the list of predators, from the size of a jackal upwards, including two reptiles that prey on impala, both that being the African rock python and the crocodile, as well as a couple of eagle species that are liable to prey on them, and of course all the cats, dogs, hyena. This is a little bachelor group. Once again, two boys that are squaring off a little bit, younger than the ones that were doing so this morning, but they're not fighting, they're just sort of squaring off and sizing each other up for maybe future clashes. Clearly the one on the left is a little bit more dominant, he looks like he's a little bit bigger, so this could possibly just be a sparring lesson more than a fight. Yeah, he's going to groom him. So this is nothing serious. This is groom me, I'll groom you. Let's just make sure we're still buddies. We're just clashing horns as a first of all practice, also re-establishing hierarchy amongst the bachelor herd. What we call allo grooming, very important. Despite the fact that they might be arch enemies by May next year when the rut comes around, it's in their interests to be good buddies right now. And important to keep those bonds, even though they need to establish a hierarchy. They need to bump heads to hone their sparring experience, to hone their sparring ability, and also to secure their place in the hierarchy of rams, so when they do have to square off with each other later on in the season, towards the end of the season, towards the end of summer, you don't get a big ram beating a younger ram to a pulp, because the younger ram already knows his place. He knows to acquiesce, he knows that he has to give way. Hello boys. Or what I would do for an elephant right now. See you later boys. Don't be naughty. Buffalo are watching you. Oh, look, here's a reptile. Hello, reptile. This is hundreds of million years old, this animal.
Also eats impala.
Also eats impala in its dreams. This is a herbivore. This is a leopard tortoise. Not sure which way to go. This tortoise seems like he's missing a scale. Very unusual to have been in the wars, this dude. Maybe if you could turn the other way. Tortoisey. Sort of a medium-sized leopard tortoise, also known as the mountain tortoise. Geochelonius. A lot of tortoises on the move now because this fresh growth that's spurting after these recent rains is ideal for them to bulk up during the summer months. They don't really hibernate as some do in the northern hemisphere. He's lost almost his entire scale covering on the left hand side, and I think, if I can't remember having seen a tortoise that is like this. Now that could have been from, and I would guess the most likely cause of that would be he managed to get covered during a fire, and somehow the fire managed to just scald him. Of course, this could have been years ago. You can see the white at the back, so that the actual skeleton is exposed. That's obviously not doing any damage to the tortoise, but I'm guessing it's a he. I'm also now looking at just at the back of his carapace. It looks like a male. Has got a very sharp curve to the back of the shell, which is characteristic of a male tortoise. But he must have been hiding under a log or something, and the flames must have just been licking over him, and very lucky to survive. Can't be easy walking around with half a white shell, because white stands out in the bush. On that note, if you're ever coming on safari, don't wear white on safari. Only because it's just such a stark, it stands out. Nothing in nature is, well, not nothing, but it's just not conducive to remaining incognito, especially if you're on foot. Unfortunately, a lot of people bring white because it's such a cool color in such a hot climate. But it's not a very good color to actually wear in the bush. Mostly because it's one of the alarm colors. It's a color that is used by nature for various reasons, to either give off alarm calls or to alert things, or as a danger color. He can't help it. He lost all his coloring on his shell. And I see a new flower popping out that wasn't out this morning. This must be also a result of the recent rain. Thinking that it could be either something called the Hypericum or the Anthericum. I'm not too sure. See if I can find one that is closer to the road. I think it's Anthericum. I'm not really sure. More kudu up ahead. Carry on doing what you're doing, feeding, grooming. It's sort of a reassuring gesture, and it's designed not to flash too much white to attract too much attention, but just enough white that an impala who's got its head down in the grass is feeding can see it out the corner of its eye, and it's a comforting gesture that the impala doesn't have to stop feeding to look up for danger, because somebody else is, and somebody else is calling the shot, or somebody else is going to give the warning should it be necessary. And that little flick of the tail is then spread through the herd of... Oh, there's something interesting happening way up, down the road. There's a dead tree. There's an eagle in the tree, and even from this distance I can see the fork-tailed drongos dive bombing it. Fork-tailed drongos are little flycatcher type birds. They are related to flycatchers. And they don't like raptors. They don't like birds of prey in their territory. And it's not even an eagle that would ordinarily bother the fork-tailed drongos. Very clearly a brown snake eagle, even from this distance, easy to tell because of the posture. It has also just leaned forward, lifted its tail, and that means it's just emptied a load of waste product, and it's probably about to fly. That's what happens. Just before they fly, they try and get rid of a little bit of ballast. Hey, he's gone. There he goes, as we came around the bend. I'm glad we actually zoomed in on it because he's already flown off. See, challenged Jason to pick it up. Oh, maybe it's just too low behind the trees now. Can't pick it up flying, but it's gone behind the trees. Brown snake eagle. It's called a snake eagle, I guess, because it's a group of eagles that do tend to like snakes. And some of them are actually very, very specialist snake hunters. Not, of course, brown snake eagle, one of them. Let's have another long distance view at those mountains and koppies in the distance. That's looking to the western region of the Sabi Sands. In the very, very distance you can see the escarpment, the very long range of the Drakensberg Mountains, but in the foreground only about, I'd say that might be 20 miles away, 15-20 miles away, are these Inselbergs known as koppies, which are sort of on the western boundary of the Sabi Sand Game Reserve, which actually becomes the western boundary of the Kruger National Park. A couple of lodges that are on those koppies.
Growing in the portrait.
I don't know if it's a tree. It is another plant that's not part of this plant. This is a brown ivory tree. That could very well just be an obnoxious invader known as blackjack. Sometimes you find figs growing in trees like that. Quite a pretty tree, this. Maybe I'll just go east for a little bit instead. Briefly. there still are elephant around. It's not like they've disappeared. We saw some elephant on the way into Djuma this morning up in Manyaleti. There have been some elephant tracks around, mostly only bulls more than anything else at the moment. In this part we saw a family group this morning. But there just doesn't seem to be any sign of elephant here on Djuma at the moment. Could change at any moment, could change any minute now. The only way to really know for sure is to investigate every corner and nook and cranny. Look, where's the lock? Greetings to Pennsylvania, Brenda in Pennsylvania, wanting to know if there are any poisonous frogs in this RB Sands. But I'm just listening to the radio. Guys talking about Mvula the leopard. Okay, so just catching up with some radio chatter about leopard. Evidently Mvula is a very big male leopard. He's the father of Karula's current cubs, as far as we know. Karula is the queen of Djuma. She's a female leopard that lives here and has been here for many years. And her mate, Mvula, has been seen mating with another leopard. Yeah, we'll send him a note about adultery. I'm not too sure who it is that he's been seen with, but it's south of our boundary. But it's just interesting to note, for those of you who are interested, that he was there. The Mulwanini, which is a riverbed parallel to our river called the Mulwati at Twin Dams, just a lot further east, and he was there somewhere heading south from that. Not expecting too much to happen at the dam on a day like today. It's overcast, it's not that warm, but it's also just after a really good rain, so there is water all over the place at the moment. Summertime, when the rains come, these permanent water points don't attract too much attention other than the buffalo and elephant and things that want to wallow. Don't go, starling, don't go, don't go. They might want to look at you, child. Glossy starling. Bye. Safari Girl, there's a name I haven't heard in a while. Safari Girl emailing me. Hello. Referring back to the tortoise. Easier trot. Let's see, what are we going to do now? I think this way. Anyway, it's better than the other. Unless I have tracks that can drive me in a particular direction. I'll just wait until I'm through this dip. So the tortoise, Farigal was asking a question about the tortoise that we saw earlier that had some of its scales missing. Whether it would be more vulnerable to predation or something. But yes, most definitely. Well, not so much predation, but certainly parasitic invasion, yes. But there are certain tick species that can drill through the carapace or even the plastron of a tortoise to get to its blood supply, to get to a vein or get to muscle. And I guess in some respects that tortoiseshell covering does offer some protection. I'm sure it offers a lot of protection in terms of weatherproofing, insulation. If you have to think about tortoise being a reptile, and reptiles needing warmth to become active, needing to warm up their blood, they're what we call, well, they're unable to regulate their body temperature the way we are, so they need sunlight to give them energy, warmth to give them energy. And the colouring of the tortoise shell, obviously something that absorbs light, that assists in the absorption of warmth, and then that white patch that will probably reflect light and reflect heat. But I would say marginally, not that it exposes it to immediate danger, but I'd say yes, marginally it changes the tortoise's vulnerability. It doesn't seem to be hindering it in any way. It still seems to be active. Whether it was this fire that we're seeing where it was now, which is the same fire that was here, this is clearly a few months old. There was a burn just on my right, this area that we've come through, and it's recovered exceptionally well after the rains. But whether it was a controlled burn or an accident, fire is an integral part of nature. Everything has learnt in different ways to adapt to fire. And tortoises in particular, who have learned how to evade fire, learned how to get into burrows or behind rocks, and they've evolved over millions of years. It's a new concept for tortoise to know what to do in a fire. Dove. Beautiful afternoon. Soft mixes of cloud that are going to be turning all sorts of different colours a little bit later on. Rod. Dip down, keep a picture because we're going quite a deep dip, going into the riverbed, and slowly maybe the signal will stay. Malum, Manjat. Pukilim. Hi.
What are you guys shooting?
Anything we can find. Do you remember that Mpisi kaya here?
Yes.
Did you go check there? That Marty next to that old Mpisi kaya off Leadwood?
No, I didn't check it.
Maybe that's where you found it.
Yeah, maybe sometime you can check it.
But also there's somebody sitting there on the clearly. Where's that Ngala?
I think that is quite inside.
Buffalo. Which one? Kuma?
Kuma.
Okay. I see that Matimba, there's some Konzo for him coming down Chitakatlan.
Cross to
To the
Malamada.
south. That far? Sure, that's far.
It's far.
Yeah.
It's far.
Yeah. We're broadcasting live at the moment to the world.
Really?
Yes, Wild Earth. And in conjunction with Nat Geo Wild.
That's very cool.
That is. We've got a whole broadcast thing here. It's like a mobile TV station. So I get to talk to the world and they get to ask questions and I get their questions in my ear from my control room. Real time. Interactive TV.
So it's called Wild Earth.
Wild Earth. WildEarthTV. Cool.
Thanks a lot, Ed.
Mark, Jason.
Mark, Jason, Alden.
Good. Have a lovely time.
Thanks,
You got your own car to yourself.
Yeah.
Lucky you. I think it was quarantine male that was seen here earlier, but he was lost in thick bush. So he's walking around here somewhere, and now I've got to think like a leopard to try and think where he is going to be. Quarantine male. He's named after that open area where we started the drive, a place called Quarantine, and his mother is the dominant female leopard of the area. But he was around here about an hour ago, I reckon. But now, it could be anywhere. So we'll just sniff around, see if we can find a track or two, listen for an alarm call. Thinking of going in to have a look at that old hyena den, because it's way off of the road. But I don't even think a track exists in there anymore. Pardon?
Make one.
Make one. Remake it. Cut the trail. I've followed Karula through this drainage before. Now, news of things happening. The lion, the Kahuma lion, the pride of lion we had a couple of nights ago, have headed north to Bubbles up a property north of us that we can't go to, and then there is the big male that was with them, that wonderful big male known as one of the Matimba males. We saw his tracks this morning coming down our eastern boundary, our extreme eastern boundary, and he continued on south probably twice that distance to even the southern part of this neighboring property. So he crossed not only our property but this neighboring property in one night, and he's far down to the south, no doubt with his brothers somewhere. Radio is scanning for some reason. It keeps jumping channels. Okay, no, didn't get there.
Well, elephants travel from one side of the reserve to the other to get their favorite type of vegetation. That's Kathleen on Twitter.
Kathleen on Twitter, look, there's a hatchling terrapin. Oh, I want to see if we can see that before it goes. That is the size of $1. It's the tiniest terrapin, smaller than some beetles. That is probably about an inch and a half across. It must have, it's a hatchling. It's making its way to a mud pan. Actually, it's not very far from a mud pan. That's quite amazing. It's a brand new terrapin. It's like it's just come out of the ground. Was that Kathleen?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Kind of difficult sometimes when I've got both radios going at the same time. I can't hear both of them. My brain just clogs up with, I just can't decipher. So Kathleen was asking, will elephants travel from one part of the reserve to another in search of their favorite type of food? Well, very much so, and that is the whole reason why elephants move the kind of distance. It's not necessarily, well, one part of this reserve, it's parts of Kruger, and they will travel hundreds of miles to utilize different vegetation, different habitat types, depending on the season and depending on what's fruiting, and depending on what's coming into leaf or flower, whatever it is that their dietary that they require. It's what we call seasonal movement. Vital to be able to get the different type of vegetation that they need. Let's let some traffic through. Oh shit! Kom dyan no eh. Kahit. Ngan chu. Chu. Pabakas. There isn't a very great variation in the habitat type in this part of the Sabi Sand. Certainly over the entire region of the Sabi Sand, which is well over 120, maybe 150,000 acres of the Sabi Sand, there's a greater variation of habitat types. But then, of course, we've got to look at the bigger picture. The bigger picture, of course, is the whole of the Kruger National Park, which is millions and millions of acres. It has vastly different habitat types, permanent rivers, giant rivers, well, just vast. So very much so from that point of view, elephants will utilize those different areas at different times of the year. But they do generally stick, or are they are generally on the move a lot, even within the season. Old hyena den here. Lovely big termite mound, very, very ancient little micro system here with a very old termite mound, hundreds of years old, with burrows on both sides. There's a bunch of bones lying at the entrance to this one. We have known it to be used by hyena when they've had youngsters. I've also known it to be used by porcupine at different times, and warthog, funny enough. I remember a lion pride, the sub-adults of a lion pride sitting on this termite mound known as the Styx youngsters, STYX, and being surprised by a big warthog that came dashing out of this hole. A couple of long bones, a piece of a rib, a vertebra. That could have been it could have been hyena that brought bones, or it could have been even porcupine. Well, porcupine don't tend to bring bones. They do gnaw on bones. They don't tend to carry the bones. My guess is it's more hyena that have brought things back to the den. When it was a den. I don't think it's a den at the moment. One of these days I'll have a look, see if they're fresh tracks. Doesn't look like there's very recent activity in the mouth of that den. Of course, doesn't mean that there isn't a snake or a rodent or something living there. Sorry, Brenda. Oh gosh, I forgot about that one because I think I was disrupted by something. Disrupted. I was sidetracked. Brenda was asking about poisonous frogs here in the Sabi Sand Game Reserve. No, yes, there is. What am I thinking? No, yes, there is. The banded rubber frog, I think, is one that can cause irritation. I must think of others. I'll have to think of others. But the banded rubber frog is one of them. And soon I'll get you a picture of one. I'll open up my frog book. A lovely little frog, does look like rubber, and is also not really a hopping frog as much as it is a walking frog. Interesting how we have an Egyptian goose on the ground and the mate in a tree. I wonder if they've got a nest up there. No way that I can see a nest can be. I wonder if he's looking out. Maybe they got goslings here somewhere. On lookout. Look how proud that gander is. Beautiful light. I'm the king of the castle. Is what he's up about. Very striking geese, these Egyptian geese. Could be he sensed some danger and he's on the lookout. I can't see any youngsters, and normally geese with goslings will be next to water because their defense to save their goslings from any predation is to rush out onto the pan or dam or lake or river, wherever it is they may be raising their youngsters. Their best defense is to get out onto the water. And I'm not seeing anything with her. She's moving away. I want us to get a little bit closer to him, if he'll let us. It's because it's a really beautiful shot. The light is perfect. He doesn't have the same posture that he had earlier. Maybe he'll strike a pose again. Or fly. Excuse me, goose. You're back to the camera. Can you turn around, please? Okay, let's go and continue our adventure. Bye, goose. Kudu bull. Magnificent kudu bull. We've seen the kudu cow, now we can see how magnificent the males are. Karen in Phoenix. I'm not too sure if I understand. Karen's asking, why do they mark the territory if they leave the area? They don't. I'm not too sure if I get that question right, but you see, animals have a, depending on the species, and I'll talk while we're watching this kudu, because he's so the question is more or less, it's not the question I don't understand, it's trying to formulate an answer, because animals that are territorial don't leave their territory. So that I don't really, I suppose what it is, I'm not really understanding about the question is the area part. What area are they leaving? Because an animal that is territorial will not leave its territory, because it'll then start imposing on another animal's territory. Well, that is half true, because animals have territories, but they also have home ranges that extend beyond their territories, because sometimes, due to pressure from other individuals and pressure from other territories, an animal's territory might not include vital elements. Please don't interrupt. Oh boy. I just got to try and think of where I was in that thought. Okay, let me try this again and switch the radio down. It's difficult talking and try having a chain of thought, and then the radio goes and it just throws me off completely. When an animal has a territory, and because of or due to other pressures from the same species, other territorial pressures, for example, animals who have territories backing onto each other, and there's a high density of maybe that particular species not allowing a particular animal access to, say, water or some vital element to its diet or its habitat, that animal will then extend its home range, which is it'll cover a larger area in search of what it needs. But when it comes to territory is the main driving force behind the success of a species, because without territory, so the animals that require territory, without the establishment of a territory and the maintenance of a territory, nothing really else can happen in that animal's life. They can't attract females, or they can't have access to females, and so they can't breed. So it's not easy for animals to or for that species to maintain a viable gene pool. So territoriality in a number of species, and those animals that are territorial, is crucial. The establishment and the maintenance of a territory determines whether an animal has favorable territory to attract the female, or to attract the females that they need to procreate and to extend the life of a species, or the existence of a species. In terms of leaving area, I suppose it's just the word area that's thrown me off, but elephants don't have territories, so they leave areas. They wander far and wide. They go over hundreds of miles, and they cover very large areas. But yes, I suppose the answer generally for that kind of question is that there'll be vital elements to that animal's existence or to its survival that it might not have within its territory, that it might need to share with other animals from other territories, and then you have a kind of an interaction where their home ranges become bigger than their territories. And to try and create an analogy to that would be to use your home and your immediate area that you call yours. See, animals will mark their territories. They will urinate, they will defecate, they will rub their heads on things, they will secrete things from glands, there any number of means by which, even vocalizing for that matter, any number of means that animals use to demarcate and delineate their territories. Us as humans, on the other hand, we tend to have walls and fences and physical boundaries, because we don't engage in the same kind of territorial establishment that animals do anymore. So if you have to look at maybe your home, the area that you call home, it might be your walled-in garden, it might be your farm, it might be just your apartment. That would be considered your territory. It's where you do pretty much everything in your life. However, you can't buy food in your home, you can't go to the bank, you can't go to work, you can't do the day-to-day things that you need to do in your immediate territory. So you need to have a home range, and that home range then extends into the home ranges of other human beings. So there are that circle, or that home range that you might extend your wanderings to, would be the bank, the post office, the shops, the hairdresser, the doctor, your work environment, what you do for traveling for work. That becomes your home range. But nothing can change the territory that is your particular territory, that is your home. And you will defend that home against other members of the same species to make sure that you can function as a human being within that territory, if that is a good enough analogy. But not every animal is territorial, and not every animal needs a home range. There are animals that just wander over vast areas, and they utilize different areas seasonally. That, I suppose, can be loosely called a home range, but they don't. Since they're not territorial, there's no need to even call it a home range. It's just the areas they traverse. Even if they're traversing the same areas year in and year out, those areas cover such a vast area that you can't really call it a home range or a territory. And just hoping that that kind of answers that question. I guess he's been listening, because he hasn't moved a muscle other than chewing the cud. Magnificent kudu bull. Just sticking out of a tree trunk. Let's continue. I want to see if this cat's still wandering around. I want to jigger. Turn here and turn there. I want to do a bit of jiggering. See if we can't find some sign of this little putty cat. Ah, there's another bull. I wonder if this can't be the R5, because we saw them in a different place earlier today. Could be more. Bush is a little bit thick both sides of these bulls, so there could be other kudu that I haven't seen. It could be with them. I don't. We have had a group of 5 bulls wandering around, and I don't think it could be them, because they were far further west to where we are now. Looks like he's looking at something up north. Ears are constantly scanning the bush for sound. Sound being very, very important to prey species. They're not only listening for a snap of a twig or something, but they're listening to alarm calls from birds. And you know how crickets go quiet when you walk by them? They're listening to the cessation of sound as much as the onset of sound. Fantastic bull too. In their prime, these two. birds flying alongside him, hoping to catch insects that he might be stirring up. And he's running across to join his bachelor friend. Oh, sorry, I should have gone the other way. Ah, no, he's dashed across the road deep into that bush now. We can try and go back a little bit that way. See if we can see if they're together. Incredible how much time these bulls spend together, feeding, socializing. They don't groom each other as much as impala do, but they still have fairly strong bonds to be able to spend so much time together. And yet, when they come across a group of females with females in estrus, they'll start bumping heads. The other boy is hidden behind some bushes. Bye bye, kudu bulls. Thank you for your appearance and your time. So, heading west, we might be able to pick up some tracks, but it's not going to be easy if he did come onto this road. What I'm hoping to do is pick up the sounds of something that is upset because there's a cat around. If he is around here somewhere. He was heading this way. He could very well have just sat down where they lost him, which was closer to Twin Dams. We're a little bit further east from that. And he was heading east. We want to look at some of these termite mounds, and we want to listen for alarm calls. Greetings, Diane. Changing subject a bit onto the subject of termites. Diane wanted to know how they build their mounds. Interestingly, it's only really for this particular mound that we see, this pinnacle termite. This is a particular species of termite. It's a very interesting cycle of things that happen. You see, termites are very, very special. Termites have quite a unique place in the ecosystem, in that after everything has eaten and chewed on all the vegetation and trees die off, there's one thing missing, and that is the ability to break down everything into its smallest of possible pieces to be returned to the soil as trace elements. And the one ingredient or the one substance that prevents that from happening ordinarily through the digestive system of animals and things is the very thing that gives plants structure, the very thing that allows trees to stand as tall as they are, to the very thing that allows plants to stand up, and that is the hard cell wall of the plant cell, which is made of cellulose. Not cellulite, cellulose. And it's the cellulose of the cell wall that is virtually indestructible in nature. There are only two things really that can break down cellulose, and those are fungi and bacteria. However, termites and the bacteria that they harbor in their gut and their habit of chewing dead wood and dead leaves and dead plant matter are able to break down plant material to almost its pure carbon form, so that everything else is released into the soil. And what is left after termites have finished it, after termites using bacteria and sometimes fungi, what is left is this glue-like substance, clay-like substance. Well, I suppose you could say it's like a clay-like substance. And they use that to bind grains of sand together to build their termite colonies. And this particular one that builds the pinnacle mound termite, is one of the largest of all termites in terms of size. And it lives in such large colonies that the requirements of the colony become very, very critical. The right temperature, the right air conditioning, the right everything needs to take place for this termite colony to survive. Now we're going to go through this dip and hopefully we won't break up too much afterwards and I can continue. Alex will have to tell me how it's looking down here in the riverbed. Old elephant tracks. Okay, looking good. And you think about it, that nickel mound, to aid in temperature control, has one of its largest surfaces available to the early morning sun and the late afternoon sun, and then when the sun is directly overhead, the smaller surface area is exposed, and that in conjunction with the fungus gardens that produce heat and the chimneys that they build to release that heat, to draw in fresh air, helps termites with that lovely clay sun-baked outer covering of the colony, helps them to maintain just the right temperature for a functioning colony. Because like our bodies require a certain temperature, so do termites. Their termite colonies need to be a constant 37 to 39 degrees Celsius. And they're one of the only creatures that can do that. One might hear people referring to termite colonies or termite mounds as anthills. They are not anthills because ants cannot bind grains of sand together. So when they pile the sand on they only reach so high before gravity makes weight and gravity. As far as I know, this little boy was here somewhere. He might have even been in this jackalberry earlier. And some pretty fresh tracks of vehicles coming through this way. radio. So hopefully this is not going to break up. Mark, here go. No, I'm just scratching around for this ingwer that was lost here earlier. I thought maybe it'd still be. Okay, thanks. Then he might have even gone south. I'm just taking a chance. Clearly tire tracks here from guys that were following this leopard earlier. Actually, it looks like they've been quite busy here. Quite thick. I can understand why if this leopard just carried on walking, they would have lost sight of him. Let's see. Might be able to squeeze through here. Sometimes after a leopard is successfully evaded its followers, might just sit down and preen and clean, and we're coming close to these little pans that are here. Some big tambuti trees. Let's see if we can squeeze under some of this quarry. Maybe we can. Are we going to get the mast under there? Buffalo thorn and all. Impenetrable almost. Kind of penetrated about as far as we can go. Less. Let me just have a look and see. so peaceful, I don't even want to talk. There's some mud wallows and pans, well, mud wallows, but very distinct game paths that I've been walking on, and having had rain, strong possibility of finding his tracks in the mud. And because he's a leopard, because he's a cat, he's not going to be walking through the grasses, he's going to be using these game paths. I might not have selected the right ones. There are a couple of them that lead away from these pans. But even if I found anything, there's no ways we can travel anywhere further east if he did go that way, because we've hit a green wall here. A green wall of vegetation. We need to swing around and go back. Hello, Russell in Texas. Russell is in Fort Worth, Texas. Have I ever been threatened, felt threatened while out of the vehicle? Well, yes, I have, Russell. And this is Africa. There are big animals here that don't like us humans too much. Excuse me, I'm going to find something.
While Mark's gone, we can play a game of Spot the Monkey.
been chewed up a little bit. Lost a lot of pieces from hyena chewing on it. I'm not too sure who that was from. It's a very big vertebra. This crest tells me that this was dorsal muscle, so most probably lumbar vertebra. And I guess buffalo, a little bit too small for giraffe. Very big though. So getting back to Fort Worth, Texas. Have I ever been threatened, felt threatened when out of the vehicle? I have, yes, I have. I'll say when I have spent, there have been times in my life when I've spent more time on foot rather than in a vehicle, doing walking safaris in various parts of Africa, where I've been on foot with all these big animals that we see now, and there have been times when, well, one just gets a little bit too close too quickly, and it's often that the animals are not very happy about it. Okay, we've got a few tight spots to get through, but this is going to be a nice little drive back down to the riverbed here. Easier to get out here than it is where we were, or where we came in. No sign of him here, so somehow I expect he's been through here.
And monkeys in that tree.
Pardon?
And monkeys in that tree, surely they would.
Yeah, they would have. They would have been shouting too if he was here. This is an area we asked. I don't know if Jason's going to be able to pan around for you, but we're often asked where would be a likely place for Karula to have cubs or to keep them in a den site. And off to my right here we have a drainage line that comes into the Milwaukee. It does a very, very sharp bend with a very, very steep, can't really see it, but this goes down. This is vertical, going down at least 25, maybe 30 feet down to the sand right at the bottom there. And this is a bend that comes around with a sheer wall and a lot of overhang, trees are hanging over. Ideal spot for a leopard and her cubs. Very well hidden, very dense, out of the way. And baby jackalberry trees. Should be able to get down here. It shouldn't be too deep. At the bottom should be fine. Red-chested cuckoo calling above us. There are some old we'll continue in the same direction that he was traveling. Who knows? He might have been through here before the monkeys came back to their tree. I expect those trees where they are, they're sleeping trees where they're going to spend the night. They are very strictly diurnal, these monkeys. And once sunset comes around, they'll be getting ready to go to bed. Not coming down from their trees if they can help it. Magic smells. Smells of lush and green. What? Look at that monitor lizard digging in this termite mound. Wow, well done, Jason. Wonder why he's digging, he or she. Now, they lay their eggs in termite mounds and they return to dig them open, but this isn't a living colony by the looks of things. There's too many holes. There's something. Can you see the grass moving? Ah, tortoises. 2 tortoises. Maybe what we've had here are tortoises that have been mating. Tortoise tumbling down the termite mound. 2 of them. Maybe they're laying eggs and this monitor lizard is just eating the eggs as they lay them. Might be mistaken. Those are 2 male tortoises fighting. I'd like to get closer, but to get a better idea. But it looks, and they're in 4. That's a very, very steep slope that they're on. And one was actually trying to throw the other one over onto its back, in which case it would have just rolled down. That's probably why I saw it rolling down. Yeah, that's a fight. Monitor lizard doesn't seem to care much. Quickly, can we get back to the monitor before it disappears? This is the white-throated monitor, or tree or rock monitor. Clearly been digging. You can see where it's been digging. Maybe she is looking for a place to lay eggs, and it's just coincidental that the tortoises happen to be fighting here. I guess there might be a female tortoise around. So it could be one of a couple of scenarios. Could be a monitor trying to find a place to lay eggs or uncover its eggs. Or it's a monitor hunting. Or it's tortoises laying eggs and the monitor's eating them. Monitor's now disappeared right inside the termitarium. And these 2 tortoises head to head. I'm going to try and get a bit closer to them. Oops. So we can get an idea of what it is. You know, if they're going to not be too disturbed by our presence. Maybe get a better idea of how they're pushing and shoving. Very angry tortoises. Especially the one on the right. He's growling and snarling and spitting fire and fury. Now this is real time, not slow motion. Tortoise time. These are the hingeback tortoises. So it's the other species that we get here. We saw the leopard tortoise earlier. This is another species known as the hingeback tortoise. Very interesting. And a conundrum at the same time, wondering what possibly could be going on here. Oh, there he goes, pushing it, and pushed him over and rolls him down the hill. Oh, okay, I think we have a victor. Trying to climb back up the termite mound. Maybe there is a female up there somewhere that's busy, and it's these two males fighting for fighting. Pardon?
For her love.
For her love, yes. He's biting him on the foot. They're climbing up the side of a termite mound that I would find difficult to climb, but I suppose they're 4 legs against my 2. They're in 4-wheel drive. They're coming round to the hole, there to the right, where that hole is. Maybe that's where the female is, somewhere down there. Oh, he's just got shoved down into the hole. Making a hasty retreat. And other one falling down. Surprisingly agile for such awkward creatures. But yes, using the scoot, using the front of their plastron, the front of the and the shell, I guess the carapace, to try and force the opponent over onto its back. Luckily here it's such a steep slope that it'll roll down and likely to roll back onto its feet. And if there's enough substrate, there's enough vegetation on the ground, it's easy for a tortoise to get back over again. It's only really if it's like on flat ground, like on the flat road, where there's nothing for a tortoise to grip. Okay, let's move on. Very interesting. Monitor lizards gone in a hole on the other side. Bye, children. Sure, that's different. Sundowner. Iced water. Reverse osmosis. Prepared water. Get a bit of air moving. Suddenly got very humid, very still, very close. Yeah. That means they're still using that nest off Leadwood Road. Beautiful. Well spotted, Jace. Jason's doing some good spotting this afternoon. Got his game on. Adult Bateleur snake eagle. Beautiful bird. Probably one of the most striking of all of our eagles, because of the red feet, the red beak, and the contrast between the grey and the white and the black. Not a bird to mess with, especially with those colours. But the closest we're going to get, unfortunately. It's the same tree where we lost Karula the other day, 2 days ago. She walked in underneath that dead tree where this Bateleur is sitting now. And I couldn't get to her. I lost her here. Failing to find the cat, and having had some wonderful other type of sightings, I think it's time to see a sunset. I think it's time to show you an African sky. There's some pretty heavy cloud over the escarpment, so we're not going to have the wonderful colour that we could have. This cloud already obscuring the sun, but we will get this throwback of light coming up behind it. Welcome to our corner of Africa here at Djuma Game Reserve. Hope you're all having a wonderful weekend. Whether it's a summer holiday or a winter holiday. In fact, we'll be driving back towards the sunset for the rest of the afternoon till it gets a little dark. we'll get another glimpse of it as it changes colour. It's going to get up to Cheetah Cut Line and then head down to, I don't know, one of the other roads. Barbara was asking about bark being stripped, and well, largely medicinal. Here's a marula that's been stripped. Up ahead we've got a knobthorn that has been stripped. It doesn't really, it's not a, sorry, I wouldn't imagine that they would, it's that important in their diet, otherwise there would be a lot more of it, but I'm convinced that it's medicinal, and that's why only occasionally you get it. There's a knobthorn that's been stripped, and for whatever reason elephants know that we don't know, that they might be using it medicinally, whether it's for stomach ailments, toothache, or whatever it may be. The bark requirements, or the dietary requirements, let me try and rephrase that again. They do need bark. They need bark as roughage, but the bark that they eat tends to be the bark of various other trees that they eat in bulk, and they're certainly not eating marula bark and knobthorn bark in bulk. They, if anything, they're actually, in some cases, it might even look like they're purposely ring barking trees to get rid of them, to open up the undergrowth for more sustainable vegetation. But remember, trees that have grown and lived for a long time have, sorry, just let me listen to this. Okay. Trees that have grown for a long time. Who's that up there? Oh, it's gone. It was a plated lizard. Just remember that again. They pretty much extracted all the nutrients out of the ground, so then the dead tree needs to feed the ground again with the wood of the dead tree in order for new things to grow, but it also needs the branches and the protection of dying branches for new vegetation to grow. And an old marula tree or an old knobthorn isn't really providing much other than shade, and it really should be feeding the soil for new plants to grow. So it's all part of the regeneration of vegetation that elephants play such an important role. in that process. The farming of trees. If it wasn't for elephants, we wouldn't have trees, and kind of vice versa. You often hear people talking about how elephants are destroying the trees and destructive elephants. Well, in normal circumstances, that doesn't really happen. That's not true, because nature doesn't create a destructive niche, or rather an animal to occupy a niche that can be destructive. Everything that nature does has to be constructive. Every consequence to everything that happens in nature, as harsh as it is for us to understand sometimes, in the likes of lion killing baby animals and things like that, everything in the long term, everything in the greater scheme of things, is all a constructive process to make sure that it all survives in the long term for those very species to survive. And yes, I guess there's collateral damage along the way. Individuals have to be sacrificed to maintain the genetic purity of the species, or the integrity of the species. Trees have to die so that other trees can live. No. See, also the other thing about big trees, very large trees, is that not only have they extracted a lot of the nutrients from the soil around them, but they also put things into the soil. They put enzymes and other chemicals into the soil to prevent other things from growing, particularly trees of their own species, to limit the competition for water and nutrients in that particular area of soil. So you'll find that by a tree dying, feeding the soil again, so many other things are able to grow there, and over time you might have initially a bunch of trees growing, but over time one will then dominate and suppress the others and become a big tree again. Spiders are starting to spin in evening webs. Getting a lot of it across my face, tickling my nose. The bark spiders that will spin a web in 20 minutes from tree to tree across the road. Catch prey tonight, break it down in the morning, and start all over again tomorrow night. In fact, there are a lot of orb weavers that will come out now and capitalize on a vast number of flying insects in the evenings. Valerie wants to know what my favorite bird call is. Gosh, I've had this question often enough to not really even find an answer, because I can't do favorites. There's no such thing as favorites when it comes to nature. Everything is fantastic. My favorite bird call, I can't even think, Valerie. When I think of one, I think of a dozen others that are just as pleasant and just as wonderful. So all I can say is I can't decide on a favorite of many things. Nature, I love everything about it. My passion is nature. So it's not really easy to select one thing over the other. So often I say my favorite is the thing that I'm watching or hearing at that moment that I'm asked that question, because that's what it is, that time. But it's not an easy question, no matter whether it's a favorite bird call or favorite bird or favorite flower, favorite tree, favorite animal. No matter what it is, there can't be favorites, because everything is so interconnected and everything is just so much part of everything else that there isn't anything that really stands out above anything else. I don't know. I can't give an answer to a question about favorites. It might appear that I favor elephants, that elephants are my favorites, but it's more than that. It goes beyond that. I have a very strong connection to elephants that I find difficult to explain most of the time. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're my favorite animal, but yes, I guess in some ways it does. But I love everything equally, with passion and understanding, and nothing stands alone. But I hope that at least answers Valerie's question without answering it. An answer that will have to suffice for an answer. But what I can tell you about favorites, though, this is my favorite thing to do and my favorite vehicle to do it in, as I said at the start of drive. And one of my favorite places to do it. Of course, even that's hard to decide what my favorite place. Home in the Timbavati is a tiny little patch of Mopani veld. It's not very, how can I put it, glamorous in terms of vistas and views and rivers and lakes, and there isn't any of that. But it's probably my favorite piece of the planet. It's the center of my universe. By the same token, Okavango Delta or Ruaha National Park in Tanzania, or even the brief time I spent in Meru National Park in Kenya, places like that, that the time I was there, they were the favorites, because I was there walking safaris and boat safaris, and just thoroughly enjoying an adventure in a new and different part of Africa. I've always wanted to see other parts of Africa, to discover how might be the same animals, how they react or interact, or how they operate differently in different parts of Africa. Seeing with my own eyes the differences in territory sizes of, say, lion and leopard, and that was a question today, and how it varies in places like the Okavango to places like Selous Game Reserve in Tanzania, or the Masai Mara in Kenya, or the lower Zambezi Valley in Zambia, even the different parts of the Kruger National Park. To truly understand Africa's wildlife, one can't just study it in the same place, because what we are and what we're experiencing and understanding of the way things work here in this little region, this little patch of the Sabi Sands, or part of the Greater Kruger, there's nothing like what happens 50 kilometers from here. There's even maybe a different climate, different dominant tree species, different topography, different geology, the geology that dictates a different type of soil, that dictates a different type of vegetation, which will bring different behavior or different concentrations of animals. And being able to put all of that together, to be able to correlate all of them and come to some sort of understanding of how different things are in different areas, but of course by how much they stay the same, how consistent things are despite differences in habitat and differences that occur. So, well, it's just a wonderful world. It's an absolutely amazing place. And as long as I'm surrounded by trees and elephants and bush and everything that comes with it, I couldn't be happier. There's nothing that can make me happier. And that extends to the underwater world. I've been diving since a very young age. I haven't been diving for quite some time now, since I was last in East Africa, on the coast in East Africa, which is a number of years ago now. But I love diving. I started diving at the age of 14 back in the 70s. And that is a different world entirely, being 40, 50, 60 feet underwater in the ocean. And although you're compelled to dive with a dive partner and dive master, and you have to have a very strong buddy system, you're still in your own world. You're in your own space in a world that is just so surreal. But it's nature, and it's just an incredible adventure. That camera, Djuma waterhole, goodbye heron. I just frightened the heron by waving at the camera. Sorry heron, fondest apologies. I guess no cats today. We'll see how Scotty does tomorrow. Looks like we might get some good weather back again tomorrow, and Scott will be here taking my place, and I'm sure Jason will be replaced with Vim maybe. Brian should also be back tomorrow, I think. He'll be back on camera maybe with me on Monday. And then not to forget as well, the other thing we'll be having tomorrow evening this time is, as we're finishing the drive, around about this time we'll be heading up to do our usual fireside chat up on the open area at our little shelter, and we'll see how that goes. So I guess we'll all be in sometime tomorrow. Hoping to find something up here on the open area as it starts getting dark. Put some light on it. It's not really that dark, it's surprisingly quite light still. But I think by the time the year turns and we start heading back into the beginning of a new year, we're going to start getting later and later sunsets, or rather earlier sunsets, later and later sunrises. But thank you for joining me this afternoon. Well, not only me, thank you for joining us, all of us here at Wild Earth. Thanks for all the questions that came through. So for Wild Earth and for all of the guys that are here on the team, I want to just say it's been a pleasure. We don't always have to find the big hairy teeth and claws. But sometimes just a nice slow drive, trying to find whatever we can, sometimes brings out some unusual things like monitor lizards and tortoises fighting. A last look at the sky before we go and say goodbye. Thanks again, once again. Bye everybody. I'll be seeing you on Monday. Tomorrow, 6 o'clock Central African time, will be Scott on the vehicle. We'll maybe just have a look at the lovely sky again as we fade to black. Bye everybody. Okay. A minute's silence, listening to the sounds of the daytime Africa go to sleep, and maybe some nocturnal things waking up.